Shabbat meditation, let us turn our pages to 1 Samuel chapter 17 verses 45. Today we'll be looking into defeating Goliath.
David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with a dagger, spear, and sword, but I come against you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel's armies. You have defied him."
In this chapter, we see how David defeats Goliath. David wins this spectacular victory over Goliath. It was only through God's help. But in some report they give from this overview, they're saying that Goliath was weak, telling that Goliath was half blind and he was weak and he was very vulnerable to that stone which David slung. And because this is called gigantism, and claimed that he was very much weak and vulnerable to the attack of David. And because of how David slung, it turned his vision, which caused brain tumor, and he was weak. But though some may give those kind of reports, but we see Goliath was not a weakling. He wore armor. He was not a very weak giant, but he was a giant who the Philistines choose to be their captain. And he wore that armor which weighed about 125 pounds and which an iron point which was 15 pounds. A person who is with a gigantism disease, he will walk with difficulty, and it is not capable for a strong and unhealthy man to wear such strong armors. But if Goliath had been the victim of this disease, he could never have carried those heavyweight armors. So if Goliath hadn't been the first class warrior in his team, and if he wouldn't have frightened the Israelites, and if he wouldn't have made as a champion with the Philistines, if he wouldn't have been so strong and mighty, he wouldn't have been chosen as their champion, or he wouldn't have been frightened the Israelites. Here we see how great and how strong Goliath was. But no matter how great and mighty he was, though some may say he was a weakling of who's having a gigantism, even though it is not the reality. Here we see how frightening he was, which made the Israelites to frighten them, and to make him as a champion over Philistine. As we see these attributes of Goliath, if it was not from God's help, David could not have won over Goliath. If it was not for God's case, he would not have been won him. And it's because of his faith in God, it made David to win over this giant. And it made, because of this faith, he was able to confront this giant with so much of dare and confidence we see in David. As we read in verse 45, which David says, "I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, whom you have defied." And he comes in the name of the Lord. And today, not only when David faced Goliath, even today, as the Lord's followers today, like you and me, as Lord's followers, we are not involved in physical battles or wars with these giants, but we are involved with war with Satan, who is more powerful than these giants that David has fought. Today, as Lord's followers, we have this battle with Satan, who's far more stronger than this giant. And we need to have this faith that David had in God. And it is God who brought victory to David, not David himself. He gives credits to God. He gives glory to God for his victory. And when we engage with these supernatural battles in our day-to-day life as God's followers, we need more faith today. And we should not lack. And God is all powerful, and He is the one who helped David, is also able to help us today to fight these battles with the supernatural beings. All we need to focus today is the faith that we need to put in God. And the God who gave victory to David over a giant is able to give victory to us over this devil. And all we need to do is seek His help and go in His name and to put our faith in Him alone. We may face situations beyond our strength and our capability, but we may never face beyond God's resources. Nothing is more greater than God's power, and we can do all things through Him who gives us strength. And all we need to focus is to put our faith in God. Not the real battle as David fought that day, but today we may have battles in different kind of areas, physically, emotionally, in our illness, in our finances, in our day-to-day life. We may face this, but God is more powerful than those things that we face. So we need to depend on more stronger resource, that is none other than God, and we need to put our faith in Him in order to have our victory over all these battles that we face.